Right, I'm going to indulge myself a bit on the next subject. I kind of want your help on it. Putting a lot of pressure on you at the moment. I'm basically asking you every day to convince me that things aren't as bad as they seem to be to me. It's a little bit like, when the crowd finally realised that the emperor was naked and everybody in the crowd started booing and hissing and pointing. See, that would be an echo chamber, wouldn't it? When once everybody had realised that the emperor was naked. I think we're getting close to that moment together now. Everybody's realised that the emperor is naked. And therefore, the only people who'd used the word echo chamber are the kind of tiny number of probably the two tailors, the two bogus tailors who flogged the invisible suit to the emperor. I don't know who else would do that. But I am conscious of asking you increasingly to persuade me that things aren't as bad as they seem to be. And even by the standards of the Daily Mail, what is happening now is actually incredible. And perhaps inevitably, Nadine Dorries has joined in ways that I think are actually quite damaging to our democracy. So what you have now is a desperate attempt by members of the cult. And this includes, I don't know whether it includes the owner of the Daily Mail. I don't know enough. I don't have the contacts. I don't have the insights. But the current editor of the Daily Mail and the so-called editor-in-chief of the Daily Mail are clearly a little bit in love with Boris Johnson. I think the best thing that I've ever read about the kind of men who inhabit those positions is that the reason why they like Boris Johnson is because he's capable of speaking to women. That these are men who spend their lives being terrified of engagement with women. It's a little bit simplistic and possibly a little bit unfair. But the other best thing I ever read about Paul Dacre is that he never goes to a cobbler's. He never has to go to a cobbler's because his shoes only ever touch the pavement between the door of Associated Newspapers and the door of his chauffeur-driven car. The rest of the time, he walks exclusively on carpet. And they are clearly a little bit in love with Boris Johnson. And I don't use that in a sort of homoerotic sense. I just mean that they will forgive him anything in a way that normally involves a degree of romantic devotion or something cultish. And the extension of that being a little bit in love with Boris Johnson now reaches the parts that other political stories have never reached in this country, where you have senior politicians and incredibly influential newspaper executives calling for an investigation into a corrupt politician to be called off because they're frightened that the conclusion will inevitably find that there has been corruption. Just stop and think about that for a minute. They're calling for an investigation into a corrupt politician to be called off because they're still in love with the corrupt politician. Tories must quit Boris witch hunt is the front page of the Daily Mail today. Minister tells MPs to resign from rigged Partygate probe. So you remember when I talked to you about the enemies of the people front page that attack judges? Or I spoke to you about the Crush the Saboteurs front page that attacked democratically elected MPs. And I spoke to you about the Our Remainer Universities front page that attacked academic freedom and academic independence. I think this is the worst. I think this is the worst, not because I care particularly about the individuals being attacked, but because they are Conservative MPs. So that fear that we had, that fear that I have about the direction of traffic and the fact that we have occasionally started to use the F word when discussing British politics, which is not a day I thought would ever dawn. When they you get that fascistic movement, that fascistic direction when everybody becomes an enemy except the absolute fellow travellers. Unless you're a fully paid up member of the cult, you're actually the enemy. I never thought I'd see the day when Conservative MPs, who by definition these days are supporters of Brexit, Conservative MPs are getting the full enemies of the people treatment from the Daily Mail. And they're getting it because of the investigation into whether or not he misled the House of Commons. When it says minister tells MPs to resign from rigged Partygate probe, and we're talking about people who are incapable of admitting that Boris Johnson has ever done anything wrong and appear at times to be almost in love with the man, then you don't win any prizes for guessing which minister it is that has called upon Tory MPs to to resign from an independent committee, the Commons Privileges Committee, looking into whether or not he misled Parliament. Spoiler alert, he misled Parliament. So what the Daily Mail and Nadine Dorries are actually calling for here is an end to accountability and a cessation of observable reality, a denial of observable reality. We don't want an investigation into whether or not Boris Johnson misled Parliament because we know that he did. That's the position that they're adopting. Just think about that for a minute. Think about what that says about our democracy, about what it says about our country. He's in charge, he's corrupt. That's why he's going. The investigation into one element of his corruption must be called off now because he'll probably be found guilty. And that means he'll get, I think, possibly slung out of the House of Commons, which might mean that Paul Dacre doesn't get his peerage, which might be part of the motivation for this entire mad project. So you turn to page 6 of the newspaper today, and there is a full-on enemies of the people attack on 4 sitting conservative. That's the bit I can't get my head around. They're Tories. I want to swear. I never swear on their own, but they are effing Tories, these people. You remember that Martin Niemöller poem? We used to quote it all the time. First they came for the... So on this, it would be first they came for the High Court judges, and I didn't do anything because I was a Tory MP. Then they came for the academics, and they came for the professors and the university academics, but I didn't do anything because I was a Tory MP. Then they came for all the Remainers in the House of Commons, but I didn't do anything because I was a Tory MP, Brexiter. Then they came for the lefty lawyers, and I didn't do anything because I was a Tory MP. And then they came for the Tory MPs, and there was nobody left to do anything to help me. So Sir Bernard Jenkin, a former ally of Boris Johnson, Conservative MP for Harwich and North Essex, gets attacked by the Daily Mail. Sir Bernard Jenkin, a Tory grandee, is under attack from the Daily Mail, the Boris Johnson fanzine. In fact, the line they've given to him, you remember, it was the enemies of the people for the High Court judges. For Sir Bernard Jenkin, it's the grandee. What's his offence? He can appreciate reality. He can see what has happened. Unbelievable. And his crime? Ahead of Boris Johnson's appearance before the Privileges Committee, Sir Bernard said that the PM should not expect an easy ride. They're even saying it out loud now. So this politician has said Boris Johnson won't get an easy ride, and that has painted a target on his back for the Daily Mail. Because we only want politicians on this committee who will give Boris Johnson an easy ride. They're about as close to admitting it as you can get without actually admitting it. So Sir Bernard Jenkins' offence is to have said that he won't give an easy ride to a corrupt politician during an investigation into the corruption of that politician. Andy Carter is the Conservative MP for Warrington South. He's refused to comment on Partygate investigations. That's not good enough. That makes him dodgy. That's painted a target on his back. He is the magistrate, because down with that sort of thing, magistrates. And speaking of lawyers, Alberto Costa is the Conservative MP for South Leicestershire. The headline he's got, the solicitor. So the people you're supposed to hate today, the grandee, the magistrate, and the solicitor. Right? Down with all that sort of thing. They can't call them lefty lawyers because they're bloody Tories. But it's the same language, the same rhetoric, the same style, the same sort of mugshots with the little lines underneath them. Let's have a look at what Alberto Costa's offence is. It's imperative the next leader of the party and the next PM places standards and integrity at the core of government. How does the Daily Mail report that? Right, you tell me, look me in the eye, does that strike you as controversial? It's imperative the next leader of the party and the next PM places standards and integrity at the core of government. Does that sound controversial to you? Down with integrity and standards, and magistrates, and solicitors and grandees. So this is how it gets reported today in the best-selling newspaper in the country. Alberto Costa, Conservative MP for South Leicestershire, made a swipe at Mr. This is like 14-year-old girls attacking you for not loving Duran Duran enough, isn't it? Alberto Costa, all right, Harry Styles, okay. Conservative MP for South Leicestershire, made a swipe at Mr. Johnson last month, saying it's imperative the next leader of the party and the next PM places standards and integrity at the core of government. Hey, that is so transparently awful. I can't actually believe my eyes. Because Boris Johnson is so obviously devoid of standards and integrity, Suggesting that we want a Prime Minister who's got standards and integrity is, in Daily Mailese, it's a swipe at Boris Johnson. Think about this for a minute. And then Laura Farris, the Conservative MP for Newbury. She's described as the Rishi supporter. She worked for Democrat Hillary Clinton when she was a US senator. She's already resigned, and they didn't even notice. So utterly bogus, fraudulent and ridiculous is this journalism. One of the people they've attacked for not resigning from this committee has already resigned from this committee, as she revealed this morning while tweeting that if only they'd bothered to ask me. So, it's funny, isn't it? So I'll read you this from someone called Tom Cook. So, good God, James is boring on about his hatred for the Tories day after day after day after day after day after day. Tom Cook, these are Tories, mate. I'm sticking up for them. They're Tory MPs. That's how baked your brain has been by these people. You think I'm slagging off Tory MPs? Bernard Jenkin is the Conservative MP for Harwich and North Essex, Tom. Andy Carter is the Conservative MP for Warrington South. Alberto Costa is the Conservative MP for South Leicestershire. They are under attack from the Daily Mail, and I am defending them. I am sticking up for Conservative politicians who are under a fascistic attack from billionaire-owned media. And you think I'm sticking it to the Tories because your brain has been boiled by your own bigotries, Tom Cook. It's tragic, mate. You've even come onto Twitter to do it. I'm sticking up for Conservative MPs, and because you're a little bit in love with Boris Johnson, you think I'm attacking Tories. I'm literally defending them from an unconscionable attack, which is identical to the attacks unleashed upon High Court judges, upon academic freedom, upon democratically MPs, upon political norms, the illegal prorogation of Parliament, whatever it is, pick your favourite. These are things that need to be defended for all of our sakes. And here I am defending Conservative MPs, and Tom hears me banging on about hatred of Tories while defending Tories. That's what a cult looks like. Tom, you are a complete cult, mate. But it's a reversible process. You just have to decide what you actually believe in. For example, Alberto Costa believes in standards and integrity, but saying that out loud, that's a swipe at Boris Johnson. I believe in standards and integrity. Stop slagging off Boris Johnson, says the Daily Mail. I believe in honesty, probity, decency. Stop slagging off Boris Johnson, says the Daily Mail. I believe in, decency, goodness, honestly. That's a swipe at Boris Johnson. Every time you say that you believe in something that Boris Johnson so categorically and completely rejects, like integrity, like standards, like honesty, like decency, like the rule of law, like academic freedom, then you're somehow slagging off Boris Johnson. 17 minutes after 11 is the time. That's really scary. But I don't think I've got the skills to communicate my fears to you. I think this, and this is what the phone-in will be, I think we've reached our big lie moment. If I tell you that Nadine Dorries' contribute to public discourse was this, if this witch hunt continues, right, it will be the most egregious abuse of power witnessed in Westminster. This is a member of the government that illegally prorogued Parliament after lying to the Queen, okay? It will be the most egregious abuse of power witnessed in Westminster. This is Nadine Dorries talking about a committee that had a Tory majority until Laura Farris resigned. It will cast serious doubt not only on the reputation of individual MPs sitting on the committee, but on the process of Parliament and democracy itself. This is someone defending a man who has misled the House of Commons, who has lied repeatedly, and who has presided over corruption the like of which we've never seen in British politics before at such a high level. And yet Nadine Dorries is saying that the people conducting the investigation into whether or not he's misled the House of Commons will, when they inevitably conclude that he has misled the House of Commons, because by his own admission he has misled the House of Commons, that will be an egregious abuse of power. That's absolutely insane. And it's British politics in 2022. Zach Goldsmith said something similar, but he's blocked me on Twitter, so I can't read you that in its entirety. But that's a man who is sitting in the House of Lords after being rejected by voters in Richmond Park solely because Boris Johnson gave him a seat in the House of Lords. So here's the thing. I want you to convince me that this is not the British equivalent of Donald Trump's big lie. Thankfully, Johnson's on the way out, and it's highly unlikely that his supporters will mount some sort of coup in an attempt to keep him in power, despite the fact that he has been democratically and legally removed from power, just like Donald Trump was. But this talk of a witch hunt, this talk of an egregious abuse of power, this utter denial of observable reality, this is our moment. To paraphrase Martine McCutcheon. This is our imperfect moment. I think this is the British big lie moment. I just do. And I want you to convince me that it isn't. 0345 6060 973. So when a cultish newspaper defends a corrupt prime minister by calling for an independent investigation into his dishonesty, to be curtailed, to be called off, to be undermined, that is the same as Donald Trump supporters believing him when he says that he's been the victim of a big lie. Convince me that this is not the British equivalent of Donald Trump's big lie. 0345 6060 973. I hope you can, but you're more than welcome to call me if you can't. Maybe you can just sort of knock the gloss off it a bit, just dilute it a little bit, because I can't believe what I'm seeing today. And it's, as I've said to you a billion times, it's the incrementals. If they sold you the Z on day one, you wouldn't have it. But they sold you the A and then the B and then the C. You get from point to point to point to point to point, when today they are attacking Conservative MPs for the crime of having the power to investigate whether Boris Johnson lied to the House of Commons, despite the fact that we know he did. The only question is whether he did it inadvertently or knowingly. This is absolutely bonkers. But it's also, at 21 minutes after 11 on Monday morning, it's perfectly normal. That's what our politics has become. So persuade me that it's not as bad as I think it is. On 0345 6060 973. Daily Mail is Fox News. Boris Johnson is Donald Trump. Nadine Dorries is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And the witch hunt is the big lie. Spot the bloody difference.